Welcome to the Growth League podcast, where we interview business owners who have experienced quantum leap growth in their business. In each episode, we're going to dive deep into our guests' firsthand experience about what it was like 90 days before and 90 days after that point when their business started experiencing massive growth. All right. Episode number 3 of the Growth League podcast. And we are here with my buddy, Mr. Matt Diteljan, and he is the CEO of Glacier Communications. I'm going to quickly just do a quick intro on Matt, and then I'm going to have him explain where does Glacier fit in the world? What does it intend to do? Who does it serve? We've had an opportunity to know each other for a long time, Matt. It's great being in your circle. It's great learning from you. I consider you to be a mentor for sure, and a strong business leader in this city. So without further ado, my friend, let's get into it. Matt attended the University of Calgary from 2007 to 2013 for a grand total of 6 years. Did Matt obtain a master's degree, a PhD? Negative. Matt did a couple victory laps prior to graduating with a Bachelor of Commerce degree, along with enough courses to major in at least three other faculties. Matt fondly calls this time his academic adventure. Before you introduce us to Glacier, tell us about your time at UFC there. I know that this is kind of where the idea of the agency was formed, was it not?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I said, I haven't looked at the About Us section on our website for some time, so I wasn't even sure what bio is up there anymore, but that's pretty accurate description, I guess you could say, of my academic adventure, which I fondly remember. And that is where that was the genesis of Glacier, where Pat and I, the other co-founder, who you also know very well, that's where we came up with the idea to secure ad space on walls in high schools and then basically sell it to universities and colleges across the country. So that's where the whole genesis for the idea started. We started that in the last year of our university, actually, in our sixth year, because 5 just wasn't enough.
That's right. It's like Van Wilder, the modern day Van Wilder.
There was a point in my undergrad career where I was actually driving in a golf cart on campus, and I was like, "Oh boy, I need to graduate. This is too much of a Van Wilder move."
That's awesome. You guys started, I probably have the facts not straight here, but was it a classic sort of garage startup type thing? What did it look like in those final couple of years when you were putting this into market?
Yeah, I think we would have killed for a garage at that time. Truthfully, we started. I was living in the basement in Bearspaw, in Acreage outside the city, with an 80-year-old roommate named Adolf, actually, which is another whole long story. And then Pat was living in his parents' basement, so we kind of joined basement forces together and started out of the basement of our roommates at the time, I guess you could say, and that's how we started. Our first office actually was and then we would just rent rooms at the University of Calgary and like the workrooms and the library and stuff, and that's where we would just meet up and just work all day or in between classes or wherever else. And that was really the first office. And then through one of our friends who runs the Cancer Research Center, he actually gave us an office at the Foothills Hospital. And so like right in the cancer research wing. So it was like all these like scientists, and then the director of cancer research for all of Canada. And then it was Matt and Pat in this little office. Yeah, it was so funny. People thought we were the IT guys. They would just come in and just
that is unbelievable.
Ask us for stuff to like help them set up Outlook, and we were just like, yeah, sure, I guess, because no one really knew what we were doing. It was really funny.
I did not know that. That's hilarious. Who was typically origin stories with entrepreneurial ventures or startups like this get kicked off with a particular project or a particular client? Was there kind of something like that came along to get things started, or did you start the company and then just go out hunting and gathering from there?
No, it was definitely a first project. That really rings a bell. I think it was, at first we started advertising on the university campus, and we secured this tabletop ad space in our, student cafeteria. And from there, we realized that it was really competitive space. The higher education space, the out-of-home advertising industry and higher ed was really saturated. We needed to do something else, or else we just wouldn't be able to grow. And so that's when we came up with the idea with high school advertising. In one of our library workroom sessions, that's where we came up with the idea with high school advertising. And from there, we went out and pitched a whole bunch of high school principals, and then we went and pitched Bow Valley College. We always just, would be cold calling in between classes or whatever, and we'd be sitting in classes emailing clients. And I think the first time where it was like, wow, we've actually got something here, was when Bow Valley College paid us, at the time, it was a lot of money to, a couple of students. It was like $10,000 to put some ads up in some high schools in the city. And that's when I think Pat and I both looked at each other and were like, wow, okay, we got something here. This is unique. No one's doing it. And we've got a pretty big runway here. So that was, I think, the first time where it kind of clicked for us. Yeah.
Did any of this come from, pre-existing experiences that you guys had in terms of, when you were in high school getting ready for university? Was there any sort of impactful advertising or anything that swayed your vote to go to U of C, or was this realized later on in your university career?
Yeah. I wish there was some kind of cool story like that, but unfortunately there isn't. It was as simple as, we wanted to start a company, and we had this like criteria, I guess you could say, or we almost made like a weighted average decision matrix, and had these different factors that we would score all these different ideas that we had. And we ran about 20 or 25 different ideas through this, decision matrix. And then the idea for Glacier was the one that came out as the highest score.
Wow.
That was literally it. It wasn't like there was like, oh yeah, when I was in high school, I wish that there was ads, giving me this kind of information. That unfortunately, that was not the origin story. It was really just, Pat and I just wanting to start a company together, and then we kind of developed this selection criteria to pick what was going to be the best company for us to start at the time.
Cool. So it started with in-school ads, like physical posters and stuff. Can you talk to me about the service suite now that Glacier offers for these universities and colleges?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the in-school ads is still our bread and butter product. That's there's not many people in North America that offer that product. In fact, we're one of maybe two, and so that's a super unique offering. That's obviously been affected a lot with COVID. That's been a real interesting challenge that we've had the opportunity to deal with here lately. But a few years ago, we diversified as well. We started offering student influencers as a product, and that's been going really, really well. We've been doing some really cool campaigns lately, actually. One of the areas where we're actually growing into now is more government-focused campaigns. Like, we're doing some work now for the government of Pennsylvania for COVID awareness type thing, encouraging people to wear masks through the use of influencers that have a lot of sway with youth. And we also just did a big campaign for the University of Missouri, actually encouraging their students to wear masks. And that one actually blew up. I got interviewed by the New York Times 2 weeks ago, actually, for that one. So that's been fascinating. And we've had a pretty crazy run with that. Like, we've done some work for the NHL. I got to fly down to their All-Star weekend and meet their marketing team. Like, that was super fun. So yeah, we started doing influencers about 2.5 years ago, and we also started doing digital advertising as well, just because our whole mantra and purpose has been form and inspire the next generation. And with such a heavy amount of their time being on digital platforms now, we just felt we basically had to get good at that and get really good at that if we're going to fulfill our mandate of informing and inspiring the next generation and truly being the leaders in high school and student advertising. So
right.
That's our product suite now, is the in-school ads, the influencers, and then also our digital suite of services.
Got you. So if that vision of inspiring the next generation kind of tethers you to a direction, the things you can offer within that seem a little bit boundless, right? And obviously you've evidenced that with kind of an ongoing iterative evolution of what you've been able to offer within that vision, which is cool. Mm-hmm. So the Growth League podcast is all about dissecting, what was it like sort of the 6 to 9 months before, or the 60 to 90 days before, and the 60 to 90 days after that tipping point, right? Can you bring us back? Is there something that pops to your mind as serving as that moment when it went from, Pat and Matt in the proverbial garage to, no, this is scale time? And then what defined scale for you? Was it a number of new clients? Was it full-time employees? Was it a top line revenue number? Bring us back to that point if you can remember.
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and it's a challenging one because I feel like there wasn't any one point when I could look back and be like, oh, that was the point where we had this massive growth. Because I mean, we've grown by at least 30% year over year for the last 6+ years. So I mean, it's hard to really pinpoint, but I think there's been a few points throughout our history where I could really go back and think that the growth was almost tangible. You could almost feel the growth. If you walk into our office, it's like, oh wow, these guys are on a growth spurt,
right?
And the numbers would back that up. And I think one of the key moments was probably in the early days when we were in that Foothills Hospital office, like I was telling you about, which was absolutely hilarious. And at that time, I was also part of another startup. I was trying to do 2 startups at once. It was a real estate technology company, and it was around that time where I just decided to commit to Glacier full time and really just go all in on that. And it was just me and Pat, and I think we had a few other employees at the time huddled in this little office in the hospital. And I think that was a really key tipping point in the early days, was just that committing and just saying, okay, I'm in this. And then, just like Pat and I, we've always had this unbelievable camaraderie where it's always been, 1 + 1 = 4. And so I think just having both of us full time in the same space together every single day just led to tremendous growth. So I think that was probably one of them. And it's just kind of like a band almost, like a guitarist and a drummer just jamming. It's just like you have to be in the same room to jam. And so I think that was one of the key points. And then I think a couple of years later, we also had another massive growth spurt. And I think one of the keys there was actually joining the EO Accelerator program, which you know as well. And I think that was another key thing, just being in a group of other like-minded entrepreneurs that are on this growth spurt, and also getting access to the EO network and just the phenomenal mentors and everything involved in that, I think was absolutely huge. Just because you're trying to grow this company and you're trying to learn how to be a CEO all at the same time, and it's just like drinking from a water hose. So to be surrounded with a group of people that kind of became my tribe, I mean, that was absolutely huge too, I think.
Do you recall a moment where you started taking very specific and intentional steps from a lead acquisition or a sales acquisition standpoint? The first client kind of emerged itself to you, and then when was it that did you have a formal sales team or some other form of marketing process that was all about let's go out and hunt?
Yeah. So I'd say around that time, once we had the first few clients starting to roll in, we got the universities and everything like that. That's when we really realized, like, okay, we gotta hit the sales hard. And so Pat and I just went full time on sales, and we started hiring a couple other salespeople. And I had, in my one job that I've had before starting this company, I was in a sales role, and so I learned how to do prospecting and sales outbound. And so it was literally just me, Pat, I think a couple other salespeople, and we just had, smartphones, and we would just hammer the phones day in, day out, and just emails and phones, maybe a cursory little CRM lightweight tool, which I think we had a free subscription for. And that's all we would do, is just make cold calls day in, day out, and it was relentless. Yeah. It was a grind. It was like 2-3 years maybe of just pure cold calling every single day. And that's how and then after that, we just got more momentum and built from there.
Do you think the idea of cold calling and hustling I don't think that will ever go away, right? No matter how many tools or tactics or platforms we have, like, talk about the power of just dialing for dollars, because I know you guys can grind that out.
Yeah. Well, I think in the last couple of years, I've also learned, I mean, we have pretty robust marketing as well. And we did a whole digital transformation there, integrating HubSpot, and we have a marketing manager, and they work seamlessly together with our outbound team. And so now I've kind of seen how, that's one of those situations where the sum is greater than the whole of its parts, because, marketing and sales, they just really rise the tides, and then all the ships rise too. So it's really, really powerful. But in the early days, we had no idea what we were doing, and we had no resources, no money to throw at marketing. And so what was cheap was just cold calling, because that's all we could really afford and all we really knew. And so we just picked up the phones and did it. And I think it does. I mean, as long as human beings are making decisions, which I think will be it for at least a long time to come, as long as human beings are making decisions, I think cold calling and sales will always work. I mean, it's not the most efficient, which we've come to learn. You know, it's much more efficient when somebody already has some brand awareness of you, and they're much more amenable to picking up the phone or engaging with your content, or getting into your funnel. But it definitely can work. And for us who are two young, stupid, poor college students, like it was the cheapest and fastest way for us to grow sales.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that. What about what role did, because you're an EO guy, I know there's a big part of EO that talks about systems and processes. When did that start coming into the fold with Glacier? Do you remember how that supported the growth?
Yeah, absolutely. That was around the time when I joined the accelerator program, and I started learning about all these different entrepreneurial skills, like how to implement an operating system into your company. And I'd never even heard of that before. And the different meeting rhythms and the Gazelles framework, scaling up and traction and all this kind of stuff. And learning about all that stuff, it just made so much sense. Pat and I were both very much entrepreneurial visionaries. And so what we tend to do is just completely leave systems and processes to waste. And it's an absolute nightmare, and it can be so frustrating, I think, for a lot of employees. So learning that stuff and buying into it and implementing it. And at first, Pat and I, we came to blows about it a lot. And I was just like, dude, trust me, like, I think we need to do this. Like, we just have so much chaos. And then implementing those systems and processes, it took a long time. It took years to get it right. And we're still tweaking it to this day, but that kind of stuff and that framework, I think, is essential for scaling and just for sustainability in general, and sanity. I think for everybody's sanity, both the entrepreneurs and the employees. Absolutely.
Totally. So what would you be doing? Let's close our eyes here for a second and pretend that it is the spring and it's like your 5th or 6th year in university. You're on campus. If I was to go teleport back there, what am I looking at when I see Matt? Are you rallying the student union? Give me a glimpse of who Matt is during that last year.
The last year. Yeah. Okay. So Pat and I, we were finishing our last year of business school. So I think each of us were taking, 4 classes or something like that. Like not a lot of classes, and just wrapping up the year. We were still kind of involved in the student government. We were the year before, we were much more involved. We were on the executive team or whatever. And then we were on the University of Calgary Senate, which was a pretty cool body to be a part of. So we were still senators, so we were still somewhat involved. But Pat and I, we would go to, a workroom. We would just book a workroom for a couple hours, and we would just go there. And I think we actually had one employee at the time. We hired our first employee. He was an MBA student. And I think Pat was just really impressed with his MBA title. So it's like, wow, we're hiring an MBA. It was a horrible fit, horrible fit. But the 3 of us would go to a workroom and just, make calls day in and day out. And we did that for about a year, just making straight cold calls.
So I'm back in that workroom, and I'm you. So there's 2 Matts.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you have 10 minutes alone with Matt. What are you telling him in that room that, hey, I got a couple tips from the future through some trial and error. What are you telling Matt in terms of lessons to be cognizant of? That would maybe it either accelerates the growth of Glacier or helps you maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that you actually experienced, perhaps going forward.
Sure.
What are you telling old Matt?
I'd probably tell him not to bootstrap and to go raise money. And instead of making these calls to clients, go make them to investors, and then you can hire a team and you'll be able to grow way faster. I think that's probably what I would tell young Matt. Like, you're going to expend the same amount of energy, if not more, and get rejected the same amount of times. You might as well, like, you've proven the model, you've got it. go raise some money and get yourself a team so that you don't have to, bootstrap and live in basement suites for the next 3 years.
That's a great insight. You talked about, you and your partner at the time, Pat, different topics. Maybe you bumped heads on a little bit. What thoughts do you have when you're approaching growth or you're trying to scale? What tips and sort of advice do you have for nurturing and working with a partnership relationship, whether it's if you have an integrator, visionary relationship, or talk to me about working with a partner when it's time to grow?
Sure. Yeah. No, I feel like I have some good experience here, being that I've done it wrong so many times. I think with a partner, because as I bought Pat out of the company 2.5 or almost 3 years now, and luckily, our friendship was definitely strained through that. But now, we're back to being best friends again, and it's all fantastic. It's butterflies and rainbows, and it's amazing again. But if I could go back, and the thing that I think I learned from the buyout and the partnership and everything up to that point was just the importance of communication and really, just being fully transparent about everything all the time. It's seriously like a marriage. You just have to be fully transparent and just over communicate. And if you're feeling at all poorly or bad about something, you have to communicate it immediately. Because if you just let that thing fester and don't bring it up right away, it's just gonna blow up down the road. And so, I think a lot of people, they say like, oh, I'll just, it's not a big thing, just sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
Until that thing is just this massive problem, wherein if you would have addressed it head on, it would have been a little thing and a small conversation, you can move on. And in fact, your relationship grows stronger. But if you just hold off and let it fester into this big thing, it'll eventually explode. Yeah.
Well, you must have learned that lesson early on, because I think, one of the things I admire about you is your ability to just have the conversation, right? And whether that's through a tough business decision or, some partnership things that you referred to in the past. I think as long as you're honest and genuine and you're right straight up front, you kind of put yourself in a better position. So that's cool. You learned that lesson early on. So my next question here is, if business growth, if scale was a delicious entree, a delicious meal, what are some of the key ingredients? You already mentioned systems and processes. You already mentioned, potentially going and getting some investment support. But what else are some key ingredients that any business needs at the foundation to be able to approach and succeed through scale?
Sure. I'd say one of the, I think the most important one, I'm sure almost every entrepreneur person would say this, is really good people. Pat and I, we were just fully committed, and we just absolutely went for it. And then we also had some really great people on our team in those early days, whether it be, we had a business development person join and help us grow into the US, or we had a COO join us that managed the operations, which actually he's with me today, now again, as a turn of fate would have it. And so we had these really great people that would join the team. And systems and processes are great, but I personally believe that great people build great systems and processes. And neither Pat or I were ever particularly great, I don't think, at systems and processes. So hiring great people that could build those great systems, I think was more our mantra and what we went for. So I think that was a big one. And then the other one I think is just, because we were young and had no idea what we were doing, it was having really good mentors and just people around us that, we could call and be like, holy shit, we just had a coup happen on our team. We had 5 people walking that actually did happen. And it's like, and we had 100% turnover in a month. And it was like, like, what do we do? And like, you can call these mentors and they can help walk you through it and, help walk you off the ledge. So I think, the amount of conversations I've had where I've called my mentors in a panic sweat and they're walking off a ledge, it's just so crucial. So I think that's also a big one.
That's awesome. Do you have that mentorship base? Did that start with EO, or did you have some coming out of university there? Because I couldn't agree more. That's
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we think for some weird reason that's a sign of weakness to reach out and get help, but I think that's crazy, right? Surround yourself with people that have been there. Tell me about that.
Yeah, luckily I've always been blessed with having great mentors. Even in university, through the student union, Pat and I, we had met some amazing mentors. One of the mentors that's continued to be a mentor of mine to this day. I just talked to him yesterday, actually. He was the general manager of the student union, so he ran the whole student union. And he's just kind of doing that as his retirement job. He's a seasoned business dude that's been around the block and like just ran some really big teams. It's 300 people, and so he was just a seasoned guy and just an amazing, I would call him level 5 leader, as Jim Collins would call him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's one of my first calls with everything. It's just like, hey man, this is happening. And it's just so beneficial because I've known him now for almost 10 years and he just knows me super well. And so I can call him and just tell him the situation. He can get to the meat of the issue just, like that. And so that's been super helpful. But yeah, him from university and then linking up with other entrepreneurs as I went through the entrepreneurs organization also. But yeah, I think just throughout my tenure, whenever I met someone that I really admired or I really looked up to, I would have no problem going up to them and just saying like, after having a few interactions and seeing that there's like a cool vibe or a fit, and just flat out asking them, hey, would you mind mentoring me? Can we meet up once a month for a coffee? I did that with a couple of people and they've always, it's been amazing. And I'm still friends with them to this day. That's the other cool thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you talked about Glacier since the original. I know it wasn't a point that you can reflect back to on that tipping point, but you've been in growth mode almost every year since you started, right? And you guys have experienced massive growth. So on that, what's the next mountain? Like, what's the next thing that Glacier is looking to sort of plant their flag on, or what's everyone rallying right now in terms of next level growth?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have two big sources of growth for Glacier in the next few years. One is going to be the American market. So we've dabbled into the U.S. and we've tested it, and we've actually our U.S. sales are now surpassing Canadian sales, which is really cool to see because we just started doing that about 3 years ago. And so I think the U.S. is just going to continue to be a massive source of growth for the company. And I mean, we have about 150 clients or so, most of which are universities and college, and there's over 4,000 in the U.S. So it's just a huge market. So I think the U.S. is going to continue to be a big source of growth. And then the other vertical where we see a lot of growth potential too is with government and government groups, because we've just realized that they have messages that they want to get in front of young people. They just do not know how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's becoming more and more evident through COVID, actually, is just seeing the disconnect between the government officials trying to speak to Gen Z, and it's almost cringy. It's like, oh my God, don't use those. Like, stop trying to sound cool. Like you don't sound cool.
Right. You're right.
And it's just cringy. And then we did some research where we saw what they're spending their money on in terms of media. And it's just such a disconnect. It's like, why are you spending money on platforms that kids are not even on? It's just mind blowing. And so we see a huge opportunity for that. We've already been helping a few of our government clients quite a bit. And I think that's going to be another big opportunity for growth for us.
Gotcha. So if you're listening to this podcast, you represent a university or college or someone in government trying to connect with young people, let's go figure it out. I'll give you his email.
Yeah.
Let's get this going. That's awesome, man. So I want to take a bit of a pivot here and I want you to bring us back to, and this is also something that I really admire about you, is that you just had some weird, random sort of year sabbatical, or almost like 6 months sabbatical. I can't remember how long it was over the last.
About 12 months. Yeah.
12 months. Why did you do that? What did you do? And bring us into the fun, pop your collar side of Matt. I followed along a little bit, watched you guys' photos and videos and updates. And that was, why did you do it? That was incredible.
Yeah. Why did I do it? Yeah, I've reflected on that quite a bit. I think, honestly, I just needed a break. Like I think at that point, it was like 7 years of just grinding and growing the company. And then the last year and a half in particular was pretty troubling and I think emotionally exhausting, just because it was like, going through the buyout with Pat, which was really emotionally exhausting because he's like a brother, and like we had a divorce essentially. And no matter how amicable those could be. It's always emotionally exhausting, which I've learned. If you care about the person, if you don't, I'm sure it's a lot easier, but there's a lot of care and love there. So that was emotionally exhausting. And then I saw an opportunity where someone on the team, they wanted to step up and take the reins over from the company. And I wanted to, just take a break and do something else for a little while. And so took the opportunity and yeah, it was about 11 months, I think, where I left the company, and I spent the first few months, honestly, just like reading and writing, and I got back into writing. So I wrote a ton of poetry. I wrote short stories. I started writing a novel, read a ton of books that I just would never otherwise have time to read about not business. Took courses on philosophy, psychology, got back into history, and then did a ton of travel. So we went to Europe and went to Berlin for a while, which was just so cool, and got to experience the Berlin music scene and everything like that. Then my fiance and I, we bought an old Volkswagen Eurovan and just lived.
Man. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
This is recent.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, yeah, within the last few months, absolutely.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So
sorry, carry on.
So that was super exciting. We just went and lived in a van like a couple of hippies for a few months, and just drove all around the U.S. and Canada, and just like lived in a van along the ocean. So that was really cool. And then went to Asia for a while, and then it didn't work out, unfortunately, with the person running the company. So I came back and jumped back into the driver's seat of Glacier, and that was about almost a year now. So I've been back at the company for about a year.
Wow. Did the break help?
Yeah.
Like, what did you feel like a new man? Quite Renaissance guy.
I think it gave me a lot more perspective on things, and it helped me recharge my batteries a lot. If I had not have done something like that, and then COVID would have happened, I think I would have been in a lot different place mentally.
Right.
But because I had, taken that time and had some space to reflect, and I think the other thing I realized too is like, I just simply need to work. Like I cannot. One of the blog posts I wrote was retirement is ridiculous, or to some title to that extent. I did some research on the history of retirement and where it came from, and I realized that it's actually quite a modern concept. And I realized I was like, man, I'll probably work till I'm dead, because I love what I do, and so therefore I'll probably just always continue to do it, and I need to be working. So I think that was another big epiphany when I was taking this time off, because by the end it was like, okay, traveling's fun, living in a van is pretty fun, but I need like more meaning in my life. I need to be building something.
Right.
So yeah, I think it gave me a ton of perspective.
Do you still have the van? Is the van kind of always ready to go, or is she gone?
Define always ready. I don't know if any of your listeners have Volkswagen
always
vans.
Always ready. Let's define it as you're always $1,000 away from having her purr on the open road.
In that case, yes, I'd say it's always ready to go.
Hey man,
always
you're ready to go. That's awesome. So businesses that achieve great growth and scale, in your case, sort of year after year, typically they have very good and great and solid leaders at the helm. But great leaders, in everyone that I've met, they have very specific and very unique to them morning routines. I want to know, do you have a routine, whether it's morning, afternoon, night, or whatever? And can you tell us about it? And how does that sort of prime you for going out and leading the charge for growth?
Yeah, absolutely. My morning routine now, before COVID, it was a little different because I did my workout in the morning, but now I do it at lunch just because my gym closed and COVID was a nightmare and whatever. But my morning routine is always, I wake up at 6 or 6:30, I have a coffee, and then I immediately write in my gratitude journal. So I write down 3 things I'm grateful for, what my intention is for that day, 3 things I'm proud of that I did the day before, and then a few I am statements. And then from there, I usually read for about half an hour, 45 minutes. And it's just a book that either it's something that inspires me or teaches me something about the world, or it's, more of a business book or like a how-to entrepreneurship kind of book.
Awesome. Then do you always head into
and then I meditate as well. I forgot to say that. I meditate as well every day in the morning.
Do you have like
Yeah.
a specific, do you need to hit, X number of minutes of meditation, or can you do it for a couple minutes? I know that's one of the big, barriers to entry for people out there, is that they think if they can't do 20 minutes, they're not going to do it at all. But tell me about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was actually another thing I really got into on my year off, was meditation, and it was such a game changer. I started meditating. I just used the Calm app, and I would meditate for 10 minutes at a time type thing. And then as I kept going, I would just get longer and longer, and then I started learning more and more about it, and I started reading about it. And now one of my favorite meditations to do is called a jhana meditation, where it's really just like a focus or a concentration meditation. And what ends up happening is it's like an onion. By the farther you go into meditation, the layers just fall off.
Right.
Whether it's like stress or anxiety or worry or anything, to the point where there's literally nothing, and you're just in this zone of just bliss. And I can usually get there. One of the things I do is I just count my breaths and just try to be really, really present with my breath up to about 100, and just counting to 100. By the time I get into like 70, it's just like bliss, and you just feel so good. And so I find that that's a really good meditation for me. I do use Headspace now too. I find Headspace is really good, but if I don't have my phone or whatever else, I'll just sit down and count to 100.
So you're pretty practiced at it now. It's part of your day to day. Are you guys in the office right now? Do you go back in, or well, I guess you're in the office right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we do Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the office, and then Tuesday, Thursday work from home. Okay. We found that's pretty good setup right now. I think people are really happy with that, and I think even after the COVID world, we'll probably continue with that for some time.
Was this something that, because I'm to be honest with you, I'm sort of struggling with this. Was that a mandated thing? Was it did you send out a survey? How did that landed on?
Yeah, it was actually back in the summer, and there was a few months there where the numbers were down, and we're like, shoot, we might not be. We got to drive some sales here. So one of the things that we did, which we used to do back in the old days, was we called them Power Hour, and for an hour a day, we would just all meet up and just hammer cold calls, and you would get points for making connections or like booking a meeting, whatever else. We broke up into 2 teams. And so we brought that back, and we said, okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're doing Power Hour. We're going to start in July. And around that time, the case numbers and everything, like it was pretty safe in Calgary, and most businesses were open back up and whatever. So it was safe. And we would never put our team in harm's way in any regard. And if anyone had was like, no, I don't feel safe, we wouldn't force anyone to come in. But we had everyone come in, and we would do these Power Hours for an hour a day and just drive new business. And it was actually so fun. Like it was back to the days when because at the end of the week, we would do a tally, and whoever had the lowest points, they would have to do a punishment as assigned by the other team. And, there was some really funny punishments. Like we had to go hold signs out on the street, like cardboard signs that say, I'm no good at sales. And like the whole team had to do that. And like just funny stuff like that.
You guys, that reminds me.
I really got into it.
You guys have a great culture there. And that's part of it. Part of the reason is people want to be back there, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or want to be in that space together. I know you guys very recently, maybe a year or two ago, one of the finalists for Culture of the Year. You guys are scary how good you are as a team at ping pong, which is very weird. Like, is this a continued, you guys have a leaderboard and a matchup board, and I've joined a couple on Friday, and not my league. I need to be on the kids table, but you guys still doing that?
Ever since we got our shuffleboard table, it has entirely cannibalized the usage of the ping pong table. So we really only play shuffleboard now. We don't really play ping pong.
I think it's because getting old.
No, I think it's a necessary evolution, because it's far more democratic than ping pong. Yeah. For someone to join the team and start playing ping pong against someone who's been playing ping pong for 4 years, it's just not fun.
No.
And so now, but shuffleboard, it's like, the gap between the best and the worst is a lot smaller. And so it's just more fun. So we play a lot more shuffleboard. But
awesome.
We still have the business cards with the ping pong on it. I don't know if we ever showed you those.
Do you have one there?
Let me see if I have one. I'm sure I do somewhere. Let me see. Oh, shoot, I don't know if I have one. But yeah, we have. They look like hockey cards. And
that's awesome.
and that's our business card. But instead of playing hockey, they're playing.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. So
ping pong or whatever.
You have the headband on yours, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So for those listening, Matt, where do we follow? Where do we follow Glacier? How do we keep up to date with what you're doing? And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can follow our Instagram. I think it's We Are Glacier is the handle. You can also sign up for our newsletter. Just go to our website, weareglacier.org. Sign up for our newsletter there. If you want to follow me on Instagram, then feel free to do that. I don't really post a lot on Instagram, unfortunately. But yeah, definitely Instagram for We Are Glacier, and then our website. You can sign up for our newsletter at weareglacier.org.
Awesome. Matt, it's such an honor to have you, man. And you're episode number 3. So I appreciate you being a part of the beginning of this podcast. And always good to hear what's going on with you, man. And like I said, I consider you an inspiration in a lot of different ways. So not only to myself, but to other members of this Calgary business community and North America wide now. So again, if you work in government, or you work with a university or college, figure it out. Call Matt. What's your email address? I'll put your email address in the thing. It's all good. Okay, buddy.
Yeah, awesome.
Great chatting with you.
All right, thanks a lot, Caleb. Appreciate it. That was a ton of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, pal.